Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is about 90 seconds since Inter Miami fell to Atlanta United. That ends Inter Miami's season. I'm going to pull up some stuff, but this is just supposed to be a raw, emotional reaction to the game. And it would feel like doing a disservice to both me and you guys to not have an emotional reaction to this game. Tomorrow, Saur and I will break this game down in its entirety, talk about the performances, talk about what went wrong, and we'll have sort of a broader conversation about this season, this team, and really just everything. Oh my goodness. But until then, let's see if I can fix this. Yeah. Okay. Until then, let's just talk about it. I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the chat. So do me a favor and get involved. And yeah, let's talk about it. Let's do a little group therapy. My first takeaway is that there was a couple really poor performances from Inter Miami. I thought Luis Suarez was really poor. I thought Jordi Alba was really poor. I thought David Martinez was really poor. And I thought those are your guys. I thought Lionel Messi had some bad service on a couple corners. He had 2 free kick opportunities that he put into the wall. He got a goal, which is obviously redemptive, but doesn't make me feel better now. And it was really just a poor performance. The midfield really struggled. That third goal, the team just quit for 30 seconds, just hoping Aviles they were going to stop the ball for Aviles, even though, thinking back to that first game, Redondo tried to play the ball on, even though they had a player go down. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys want to talk about. Inter Miami has a number of shots. Brad Guzan had a good game. It wasn't so good that they couldn't have scored 3 goals, but certainly it was an impressive performance from him. He had another big one. Inter Miami finishes with 25 total shots, but only 3 big chances, a couple huge saves from Brad Guzan. Jordi Alba had a header in the box. That was just an incredible save from Guzan. So we'll reevaluate again. I'm going to watch that game again tomorrow, and we'll do the full breakdown the following day, or tomorrow night. But for now, it's just emotions. It's just really hard, man. I don't know what to tell you guys. The midfield, I thought individually was okay, but it lacked balance. I thought each individual player was solid. I thought Federico Redondo had a really impressive game. We've seen him gas out a number of times this season, but I thought he was the hardest worker at the end. Diego Gomez, that's our last time we're going to see him in a Heron uniform, and that was disappointing, but ultimately, I didn't think he had a huge impact on this game. He had a couple opportunities early, including a goal that was called off. That would have been huge, but it was the right call. He was offsides. Again, I thought Jordi Alba was really poor. Speaking of veterans that didn't play well, Drake Callender, we could have used one big save, of course, in this game. In this whole set, he didn't have that one magic save, and so it's not a goalkeeper's job to have a magic save, but when the opposite goalkeeper is playing like Brad Guzan did, that was just so frustrating. But yeah, Martinez, Suarez, Jordi Alba, and Lionel Messi. I thought those were the 4 players that had the games where they were below their average the most. I know their stats aren't going to look bad because there's a goal in there and there's an assist in there, but I thought just minute to minute they played really poorly. Cello Wigan I thought was fine. Toto Aviles had a number of one-on-one opportunities, but he had a number of one-on-one defensive. Excuse me. He had points when he had to defend one-on-one, and he did a good job. But obviously, you get marked off when you fall down and the team gives up a goal. I'll get to your comments in a second. I just want to go through everyone again. Robert Taylor. We'll have that conversation later. I was happy that Tata made subs early. He brought Campana on. But ultimately, this was a team that struggled to create really, really high quality chances without just putting the ball into the box. They did get a couple on header opportunities, but Brad Guzan had a couple really good saves, and Messi had a goal and a couple opportunities early that one was called offsides from Diego Gomez. And that's sort of how the cookie crumbled. Robert Taylor, Sergio Busquets, they didn't have that much of an impact, but it's sort of hard to. Francisco says this team needs balance. The only thing Miami doesn't have. Well, listen, we talked about it all week. Once you lost Yannick Bright, he was the balance in this midfield and in this team. And it's an absolute disaster of roster building and team management in the offseason that Yannick Bright had to be this player, because you're talking about a draft prospect or draft pick that you're asking to be a key starter. And as soon as he leaves your team sort of falls apart in transition. And by the way, this is exactly what the early parts of the season looked like before he entered the fray of this team and became a locked-in starter. So yeah, you're right. Balance needed. They're going to have to go get another 6 next year. Doesn't have to be a superstar. It doesn't have to be like a dominant player, but it has to be a guy that can rotate with Yannick Bright. And that could be Dixon Arroyo again, right? There are good players that can fill that role for very cheap that you can get from South America. They can be Argentinian or whatever, but they have to be able to do that role and just help you in defensive transition, because you're going to give the ball away a lot. And when you have Messi and Suarez, you're not defending with 10 guys. And so you need a player that's going to help break down when the opposition team gets opportunities going the other way. And Inter Miami, as soon as Yannick Bright left the game at halftime in game 2, they really couldn't stop it, aside from a couple really nice one-on-one moments from last week, Noah Allen, and this week, Toto Aviles. Wookie says, what a bad performance. Anton says he's heartbroken. Sean says that midfield structure. Yeah, we talked about in the pregame. Defensively, it was weak, and the game plan was to go all out to score, and you only scored 2. And when you're going all out to score and be an offensive team and try and score 3 and 4, if you only score 2, you can lose the game. And this is exactly what happened. Nuno says Suarez is washed, but somehow he will be back. Disappointing from Suarez, I think, both game 2 and game 3. Anton says it was awful when Aviles went down. Couldn't agree more. Really just tough. Rasa says, do you know what's worse? There was a play in the 88th minute where Atlanta was running to our goal and there was only 3 players running back for it. The players were not hungry for it. Just to go to substitutions, I thought David Martinez was really, really poor in this game. I would blame him for the first 2 goals. I thought there was room for Noah Allen to come into this game late in the second half, or even maybe at the 60th minute for David Martinez, just because as you push numbers forward to create offense, you're going to be left in more vulnerable positions going the other way, and Noah Allen gives you a little bit more athleticism and pace for that one-on-one defense. And you could see already early in the game, David Martinez was just struggling for pace against Sabalo Bjanice and Thiago Chiare. So I thought Noah Allen could have come into this game easily. Julian Gressel, you could have thrown him on in the 83rd minute at the same time as Robert Taylor. But, that's all sort of second guessing. MSP says Tata out. Listen, this season was a failure. The season was a failure, and that is clear, and it's easy to say. They won the Supporter Shield, but they talked about at the beginning of the season wanting 4 trophies, and that was the goal they set out. That was the expectation they set out, and they failed to meet it. And so we can talk about the points record. We can talk about all of the goals that we scored and the goals per minute that Messi had and whatever. But ultimately, their standard and the standard they sold to us as fans was 4 trophies. And of course, we can understand if you get a couple injuries, you might get knocked out of one tournament. And so it was easy to forgive maybe one performance like what happened in the CONCACAF Champions Cup down in Mexico. But Leagues Cup, you had enough talent to get through. Certainly here you had enough talent to get through. I mean, again, 11 for 11. This team is much better. I'm not sure who starts on Atlanta's team for Inter Miami. Even Brad Guzan, who was great in this 3-game set, I'm not sure consistently over the course of the season would have started over Drake Callender. And so, it would have been nice to have Tiade's pace over the top, but he wouldn't have been a consistent starter. Pedro Amador, incredible series. He's an incredible find for Atlanta, but you're not starting him over Jordi Alba. So again, you're talking about a Atlanta team that might not have a single player that starts for Inter Miami. Maybe Gregerson, maybe Derek Williams starts in defense. But again, this is just a mismatch in terms of talent. And, you have to give the coaches a lot of blame for that. Michael Donnelly, what do we need for next year? So here's the plan for us, the Drive Pink Dialogue. We're going to do the full game breakdown tomorrow. But then in our midweek episode, we're going to do a full what to look for off-season preview. And we'll do it in sort of a fun way. We have an idea for that. But basically, we'll go over everything that we think Inter Miami is going to do this off-season. But I think you need a couple things. I think, A, you need a left winger that can be goal dangerous from the left side. I know Diego Gomez can score in transition, but you need a guy you trust that can cut both ways, left and right. Left to put in a cross, right to be goal dangerous, because that's going to help you spread out a defense that sits back in a low block, which is exactly what Atlanta did this whole series, and Inter Miami never effectively countered, just hoping that Jordi Alba was going to be that answer on the left side, and Jordi Alba I didn't think had a good game back-to-back. I think you also going to want to add a pacey player. So many times this offseason, or I'm sorry, this regular season, we talked about how Suarez and Messi don't give you pace over the top when you're hitting in transition, where you're trying to hit in transition. So if they can get an ultra pacey player, I think that would be really helpful. I think you need to add another 6. It doesn't have to be a big name 6. It doesn't have to be a big talent, but it just needs to be a guy that can either compete with Yannick Bright or at least be the guy that comes in when Yannick Bright is injured or needs a rest or whatever. I don't know about Chelo Wiegand. They have an option to buy him, but if you buy him, then all of a sudden he costs a lot more against the salary. His cap charge is significantly higher because you have to amortize the transfer fee. So I don't know if he'll be back, and if he's not, you need to replace him. You might want to go get a second right back, because I don't know how much you can rely on Ian Frey, or at least maybe get another defender who can be a backup right back. So we'll see there. And then I think you got to get another center back. Tota Avilas should be back unless he gets sold on. David Martinez will be back at least until the middle of the season, because that's when his loan ends. So, but I don't think this team is going to is going to be dramatically different, at least not compared to last offseason, where we had a large number of outgoings and a large number of incomings. Porfirio says, Jordi Alba poor, bro, huh? Oh, I thought he was bad from the first 3 minutes. He was trying to throw the ball or pass the ball to Tota Avilas, and he overshot him. And I thought, this is just bad news. And I thought he was poor for much of the game. Not a lot of great crosses, but feel free to disagree with me if you want. Taran says, what can Messi do when the team lacks balance? I didn't think Messi had a good game today, but I also don't think this team was set up to succeed with Messi. I don't think this team was set up to get the best out of Messi. And I've talked about this a million times, but you need that left winger to get the most out of Messi. And, I see a lot of comments when we talk about Robert Taylor and Jordi Alba, and how Robert Taylor makes Jordi Alba a worse player. And I can sort of buy into those arguments. I don't know if I believe them 100%, but I can understand where you're coming from. But Robert Taylor makes Lionel Messi a better player. And your primary goal with this team is to do whatever it takes to make Messi as good as possible and make him as effective as possible, because he's the best player. And so if you're designing your formation to get the most out of Jordi Alba instead of Messi, I think that's just wrong. Rasta says we need a new coach and better defense. What am I smoking? Well, I guess not. Ben Cram, not great. He wasn't super impactful. Like I said about the midfield, I didn't think any of the three of them had an awful individual performance, but the balance wasn't great, and we saw that in the first half. Gabriella says, I knew we wouldn't win with our poor defense. Defense wins games, not offense. Yeah, and you called it in the pregame show, and we tried to defend it, but it ultimately came back to bite us. So you were absolutely right. SD says, we need more defense. Yeah. Anton says, I was happy to see Taylor come on until I saw Taylor doing nothing. Well, the thing is, when Taylor came on, it was the 83rd minute, and it was just all hands on deck going forward. And so you're not playing a structured team, and you're not playing a structured game anymore. You're just throwing bodies forward, trying to create whatever it is that you can create at that moment. So Taylor didn't do anything, but it's not like he had a defined role that he was going to be effective in. It's just throwing bodies forward that are good finishers and hoping one of them can get a good opportunity. MSP says midfield is bad. Hard to disagree. And the disappointing thing about this is there's so much depth in the midfield, and it did come back to bite us with some injuries in this game. Obviously, Busquets couldn't start, wasn't healthy enough to start. Yannick Bright was the big one, though. Yeah. Josue says, genuinely annoyed at Messi. Any little bag of chips he had was getting blocked, so why keep doing it? Use your other forwards. Suarez messed up over and over. Yeah, this was the first time I thought Messi had a below par performance, even though he scored, even though in previous games he hadn't scored. I thought his minute-to-minute performance wasn't that great in this game, at least by his standards. I did think he was better than Suarez and Alba, but, you know, and I think that's the bigger picture about this game is Jordi Alba, Luis Suarez, Lionel Messi, David Martinez, Drake Callender maybe could have saved that one goal that he got beat near side. Like, these are your veterans. These are your stars. You need them to step up in games like this if you want to win championships, and they didn't, and so you don't, and you're going home. And, you know, the other guys, Redondo and Gomez and Cello and Aviles, like, I thought they played fine individually. It's just, you know, they're feeding the ball as they're supposed to the guys that are supposed to make the plays, and they just couldn't. And there's no turf as an excuse. There's no away crowd as an excuse. There's just no excuse, really. Wookie says, I knew it was coming. The team is dysfunctional. They should never lose to a team like Atlanta. Bright is the Miami MVP. I will say, I'm not even going to say it. We were on Yannick Bright since the preseason, and the fact that it took Tata so long to get there was bad, but also Yannick Bright became the reason we won the Supporter Shield. And we didn't have him in the Champions Cup. We lost. We didn't have him early in the season, and we weren't on pace to win the Supporter Shield. He comes in, we win the Supporter Shield, go into the playoffs. We lose him. You know, remember, at halftime last week, we were up 3-1 overall. And they scored both their goals after he left the field last week, and they scored 3 goals without him on the field today. So just, you know, it just highlights his importance. Messi, 8.5 rating, by far the best on the pitch. Goal and assist today. He did his job. The rest of the team folded. Awful defense, awful goalie. Suarez is also garbage. Listen, Messi did have his goal. Did he get an assist on the other one? Just double check real quick. I don't think he got an assist unless it was a hockey assist. It looks like Cello got the assist on the Matías Rojas goal. He got the shot off, but it was blocked by Brad Guzan. So I mean, listen, if we win this game, we're talking about how Messi played fine. So I guess I don't want to criticize Messi too much. Just when you lose, I think it's natural to look at your best player and say, why didn't you carry us to victory? And I don't think Messi had the type of performance that was going to carry us to victory. Natalia says, Suarez and Toto Aviles ruined my day. Yeah. No Boosie, no party. Atlanta also just played really well. Didn't look like a 9 seed at all. Yeah, we talked about it going into the playoffs. We could have been DC United, who we would have run over. It could have been could have been Philadelphia, who we would have run over. And it was Atlanta was the one team we identified as the team we didn't want to play. And it's because they play the ultimate system to beat this Inter Miami team, and they played it well. I will even say, I thought they got a little lucky that Gregerson got hurt in that first game and didn't play in the second game, because when they went back to a back four in this game, and let me just find the time for that. They brought on Gregerson in the 60th minute, and they went to a back four, and I thought that actually played into Inter Miami's hands. So Gregerson being out for so much of this series, I think actually helped them, because they ended up going to a back three, and it was more effective to stop this Inter Miami team. But yeah, they played well. Pedro Amador is an awesome player. We didn't really get beat by Lobjanice. We didn't really get beat by Miranchuk. But Tiare, with that speed, we knew he was going to be a problem. Again, I thought there was room for Noah Allen instead of David Martinez in this game, but here we are. Summer says, Messi was alone in the attack. Suarez did not help at all. All the feed he fave was not converted. So sad. Well, the other thing is, listen, I don't think Inter Miami set up in a way to create space and opportunities for Messi. So that's just part of it. And that's on Tata Martino. And we talk about this every time we talk about Robert Taylor, but it comes back to bite you. And that's why we talk about that even when we win, is because in moments like this, it's gonna be a problem, and then you get eliminated. I always say the playoff is really bad. Almost the best 4 teams from the East got eliminated. No, I love the playoffs. I mean, I'm American, so I expect that. But if you want to be a champion, you have to play like a champion when it matters. And Inter Miami didn't. It's really that simple. Josue says, Messi, please pass before you have 3 guys attack you, only for the ball to be taken away from you. Miami King says, please respect the soccer in MLS. The playoff makes the better team lose. Now the 3 best teams got eliminated. I will say Cincinnati had not been playing like the best team. So the fact that they got eliminated shouldn't be a surprise. They were really good in the first half of the year and then kind of struggled down the stretch. So Columbus, obviously a surprise. And then obviously Inter Miami was just a disappointment. You said Messi was poor, bro. You're embarrassing yourself. That wouldn't surprise me. Josue says, put house money on LA Galaxy winning it all. I don't know how you could put house money on anyone winning it all after watching what just happened to Inter Miami. The playoffs is just marketing. Respect to soccer, please. Nuno says, need 2 quality center backs as soon as possible. Listen, the thing is, they're going to have David Martinez back. They're going to have Toto Avila's back next year. They're going to have Sergio Busquets who can play there. They obviously are going to trust Noah Allen going into next year. So I think they're going to replace Christoph. They might replace Ryan Saylor. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but and Ian Frey is going to be back early in the season. So I think they'll replace Christoph with a quality center back, but I don't think you're going to get like a huge upgrade on this team because, listen, clearly Tata Martino doesn't value defense as much as offense. So I think they're much more likely to go after a guy like Neymar and then bring in sort of another David Martinez type player and hopefully a DM and maybe another depth option at winger because I think Robert Taylor's probably going. Taran says, need to bring in a pacey striker, left winger, and defense. Yeah, this is what we talked about. And then add a defensive midfielder, and I think that's the offseason shopping list. Silo says, simple. When Avilas went down for no reason, the team should have continued playing. 100%. Sean says, I wouldn't buy Cello. I wouldn't either. He was fine, but he was just fine. And if you think about this team, and not to be rude, but if you think about this team's best 11, he's the 11th best player. So you have a guy that's out of contract. You're going to have 3 months to find a replacement and an improvement. And so I think it's pretty clear you try and do that. But maybe Tata really likes him and maybe he's good chemistry. I don't know. But I would imagine you could upgrade on Cello for cheaper too. Ash says Tata out right now. I am curious to see what Inter Miami's front office says about this because there's no way to spin this as a success. This is a failure. The whole season is a failure. It's cool that they won the Supporters Shield. It is cool, but overall season's a failure. Only, 1 trophy, and the 3 tournaments you lost because your team wasn't ready to go or your coaches weren't good enough. And at that point, I think that's some of it on Tata. Porfirio says Aviles is $7 million too expensive. Listen, he counts as less than that because he's a U22. His goal is to move on to a better league, and he will get sold on eventually. I doubt it's this winter. Could be next summer. But the other thing I'll say is they'll have next year Facundo Farias back, so maybe they'll only get one forward player. They'll have Redondo, who's a U22, and they'll have Aviles, who's a U22. So maybe they'll try and move one of them on in order to bring in a different U22. That wouldn't shock me, especially if you could sell Aviles on to a club in Spain or something for $10 million and get your money back. Maybe Redondo's ready for that move also. I don't think so, but, stranger things have happened. That feels like more of a next summer thing. Silo says, and Messi scored was the reason for the second goal, created at least 3 sure goal chances. Can't just do everything alone. Yeah, that's fair. Again, I think if Inter Miami won, we would say Messi played fine. But again, I guess that's my point is Messi's the superstar. And so when you're losing and it's game 3, you need your superstar to be the best player in the world. And he was fine. He wasn't the best player in the world tonight. So they won't go anywhere with Tata, says Wookie. We're going to have a Tata conversation tomorrow. I want to wrap my head around this more. I didn't think Tata was awful tonight. But, you know, I didn't think he did anything to win the game either, obviously. You don't know anything about soccer. Sad. Squandering the opportunity. Okay. Are we like the Golden State 73-9 team that lost the finals with the Cavs? No, because that team lost to the best player in the world, and we have the best player in the world. And LeBron went crazy, and Kyrie was great in that series, but that's not what Atlanta is. Messi's talent is being wasted with his defense and strategy. Yeah, especially the strategy. Nuno says to get the most out of Messi, you can't. Suarez can't start, but he will because they are BFFs. Again, I'll unpack that one tomorrow because it's really just tough. Mess says, I can't believe this. Maria says, how sad. It's a nightmare. I can't believe this. We got robbed of 3 penalties. Yeah, well, listen, anyone who says that the refs are in the bag for Inter Miami, there was a couple of opportunities that would have been very harsh for Atlanta, but a ref that was being paid to win this game for Inter Miami would have given them penalties. I'm not saying they were, but certainly that I think just proves that Inter Miami's got the refs in the bag. MSP says, guess having a goalie like Brad Guzan makes all the difference. Well, listen, Brad Guzan didn't play like that all year. He was solid this year, but he wasn't that. He stepped up in the biggest moments. And I guess part of this conversation is just, did the best players step up in the biggest moments? And Inter Miami's didn't, and Atlanta's did. Even though Atlanta's best players aren't nearly as good as Inter Miami's, they stepped up. This is Tata being outcoached by Valentino. He won the last 2 games with average players against an elite team, says Bizrat. Silo says, and once again, let's give credit where it's due. Brad Guzan saved off the lineup bullseye. Yeah, listen, I'll rewatch the game tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. But there's probably another 2 or 3 goals in there for Miami if Guzan doesn't play like that. A says football is the midfield, period. 100% agree. When we didn't have Busquets or Yannick Bright available for this game, I mean, the whole week it was like, this is scary. Hopefully they can be available in this game. And obviously they weren't. So if Messi doesn't score 3 goals, you say he had a bad game. Classic MLS fans who have no idea. Listen, man, you can say that. That's fine. That's fine. Yannick Bright not being there is not the reason we lost today. He's just a rookie. It was the combination of Boosie and Bright missing. I disagree, man. I think if you have Bright on the field, they don't score those first 2 goals. He is the guy that stops them in defensive transition. Like, the difference in Inter Miami's defensive transition game in the first half of the year before he got sort of locked into the lineup, and the second half is night and day. And it's really just when he's on the field. And there was a lot of games this year where he didn't start. There were a couple games as he was sort of transitioning into the starting lineup where we gave up a couple goals early in the game and Tata has to throw him on at halftime, and we come out and win the game and shut him down. Again, they scored 5 goals in the 135 minutes that he wasn't on the field. They scored 5 goals, and they scored what? 1 in the 135 minutes he was on the field. So listen, Busquets was a huge loss too, no doubt. Josue says, I don't think he's talking to me. Messi is not a defender. That's where Miami lost the game. Calendar 4 shots on target, 3 goals. Yeah, listen, I think Calendar probably could have had a miracle save, and we would have, won this game. And they were extremely lucky too. Their first goal was a huge deflection that took the entire defense out. Sorry, guys. I just want to go through them all because I love interacting. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear how you guys are feeling about this game. Messi had 2 prior games to learn the Atlanta defense and yet continued to make similar mistakes. This one, I don't blame on Messi. This is Atlanta. I'm sorry. This is Tata Martino. Atlanta played to stop Messi, and they played to stop Suarez. And Inter Miami never adjusted to that to create better opportunities for Messi. We talked about it in the last 2 post games. We talked about it in the last 2 pre games. Miami needed to do something to create more width in the central part of the pitch in order to get Messi better opportunities centrally where he loves to operate. And they never did that. And that's on Tata Martino. He over-relied on Jordi Alba to create that width, and Jordi Alba didn't reward him with quality performances. If you remember in that last game, game 2, Messi had a beautiful ball over the top to Jordi Alba, and he just puts it 4 yards over the net. In this game, I didn't think he was good. He almost had a goal, but his crosses weren't particularly effective. He wasn't creating width down the left side. I just imagine getting 65 goals. Not even 20 place teams get it. So many. Ash says Tata has a special talent for getting the least out of his players. CropX says Neymar needs to come. Neymar needs to get healthy and be able to pass a physical before Inter Miami can sign him. Sean says we need another Gregory type and another Boosie-like center back. Yeah, we talked about it in the pregame show, and I think maybe I undersold it, but Saur was certainly more on this, that Inter Miami needed to have another DM. And again, they got lucky Yannick Bright was as good as he was, because if it wasn't for him, Inter Miami would have had a terrible season. They probably would have finished behind Columbus. They wouldn't have won the Supporter Shield or broken the record. Like, Yannick Bright was the difference for this team's defense in such a huge way. And it starts in the midfield, and a lot of you guys have said that. Porfirio says, so he's bad because he didn't do a FIFA PlayStation game. What world are we living in? No, but like, this is interesting to me. And I think it's the difference between growing up without the playoffs and growing up with the playoffs, because you make your legacy in the playoffs. You show up in the biggest games. And I'm not saying Messi was awful, but he didn't dominate in the biggest games. And that's like a big thing here. And that's a big thing in the MLS. And you'll see Ricky Puig get a lot of plaudits for his performance in these playoffs. And if LA Galaxy goes all the way, or if Atlanta goes all the way, and it's because of Brad Guzan, they're going to talk about how great Brad Guzan was. Doesn't matter what he did in the regular season if he plays like this throughout the playoffs and they win. Josue says, Tata continues to fail at game planning when it matters the most. We should already have low hopes for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Again, I'll be very interested to see what Inter Miami says about Tata, because I don't think they can spin this to be a successful season. And I don't think they should try. So Ash says the roster won't mean much for substandard manager. Tata is a closet Atlanta United fan. They paid $7 million for Toto Aviles. Why? Nuno says Redondo might be sold to River Plate. That would shock me. Shock me if that happens. I saw that rumor, but it would just shock me. Because if you're Redondo and you go to River Plate, you're delaying your career like 2 years to go to Europe. So I think he wants to go to Europe, but maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like it in South Florida. He wants to go home. It all would have worked out if Bobby T started. Is that Robert Taylor? Well, it wouldn't have worked in this game because you haven't played with Robert Taylor over the last 2 months. But if you had played with Robert Taylor and he was in better form and you had some chemistry built up, it certainly could have. Miami King says there's at least one handball. Yeah, in other leagues, there probably was a handball. In the Premier League, there would have been one called as a handball. Either Bright or Boosie needs to be on the field. They stop different transitions in different ways, though. True, and I think we need to get a third player that can be that guy, because we can't have games where we don't have either of them. This all ultimately ends in Tata being underprepared and getting out-coached. And the thing about Tata Martino is he's not a young coach anymore, so you don't expect him to grow or improve. And that's, I think, the scary thing. Like, you don't expect him to get better month to month or game to game, or when he makes a mistake, you don't expect him to like never make that mistake again, because he's in his 60s and he is who he is at this point. Mark says, I knew we were set up to fail when I saw Benhan Redondo in the midfield. No defensive presence. I mean, Tata did his absolute best to not help us. Taylor needed to start. Hard to argue with that. Nuno says, yeah, this game was screaming for Robert Taylor with Neymar needs to come to Mercy Hospital. Technically, Redondo is a DM. He is a DM, but he's not a defensive transition specialist like Yannick Bright. And when you're Inter Miami and you're trying to dominate possession and you're trying to play so far up the field, and the defense is going to play you in low block and try and hit you in transition, you're going to have lots of little turnovers that lead to quick transition opportunities for the opposition team. And so you need a player who's like good at killing those and who's going to run with the midfielders that are running into the box and stuff. And that's not Redondo's game, which is fine. Like, he's a different style of player. There's a role for him. I thought he finished the season on a high note. Well, individually, but hopefully he makes a step up next year, like we saw from Diego Gomez. We keep forgetting Atlanta is a thorn in our side. Galaxy didn't play a team like that. It's not the same comparison. That's fair. I just want to check something real quick. By the way, guys, do me a favor. We got like 40 people watching this. Hit the like button for me. Ash says, we see other managers communicating with their players while Tata looks like a statue. I will say, I'll say this about Tata. I think he has some real positives. I think he's really good at bringing players into the club. Like he's got a good scouting network, especially in South America. So he finds talented players and brings them in. I think he does a good job of that, especially sort of at good value in terms of what you're doing with the cap. But he's not a coach that makes Inter Miami better. And he's not a coach that let me rephrase that. He doesn't make Inter Miami better than the sum of their parts, like some other coaches do. And he's certainly not the best coach in MLS. And so if you're talking about Inter Miami trying to be the best team in MLS and best team in MLS history and having Lionel Messi and Busquets and Suarez and trying to sign Neymar and trying to be that club, like you also have to apply those standards to every spot within the organization. And so that means your general manager, means your head coach, means your strength and conditioning staff and your medical staff and all of those things. And so for us fans, the most obvious is the manager because we see his results and we see the decisions he makes. But if you're in Miami, you have to try and be excellent at everything. And, you know, I don't have any idea what the medical staff is up to or the strength staff or whatever, but there's probably some work to be done with the academy staff. But certainly Tata Martino, I don't think is the best that Inter Miami could get. So, yeah, Nuno says Tata coasted on talent. Thomas says people want Neymar, but your defense and midfield is trash. Shore was right. We need to build a roster, and Neymar's not going to defend. It does bring up a good point because if you have Neymar on the team, it feels hard to start Neymar, Suarez, and Messi all at the same time, unless you're playing like 3 DMs. I don't know. But I really think the roster mismanagement comes with the in the midfield more than the attack. They have so many 8s in this roster. If you let me pull up my little chart, you know, Julian Gressel, we could have spent that money on a really good defensive. We could have probably kept Gregory with the money we're paying Julian Gressel, and that may have probably been a better use of that cap charge. But Diego Gomez, Kramaski, Ruiz, they're all like box-to-box midfielders. And so when they brought in a guy like Redondo, they shouldn't have brought in another box-to-box midfielder. They should have brought in like a defensive-minded midfielder, and they didn't. They chose Redondo. So Boston Sunderland, same thing. So we'll see. They have a kid in the academy, a number 10, Santi Morales, who probably might not be ready to start the year next year, but maybe he'll be a factor at some point next year. I think he's more of like a 10 than a box-to-box. Tyler Hall, center back. They might try and transition into the first team. He might be sort of center back, right back. We'll see. A little undersized, but there's plenty of undersized center backs that make it work. Can we sign the third bench manager from the Argentine men's national team? No, I'm sure Messi knows him. Wookie says, Tata out. Team needs a fresh start, but considering Messi wanted him, right? Will the club let him go? I don't think the club's going to let him go because I think the club wants Tata. I think the club wanted Tata more than Messi. And by pedigree, Tata Martino is a good MLS coach. No doubt about that. He's won a trophy. He's done a lot in the international game. He coached at Barcelona, right? Like there's very few coaches that have ever in the MLS that have coached at that sort of level. And I'm not saying he's hugely successful there, but the fact that he had the relationship with Messi, Argentine national team, Barcelona, the fact that he's won a trophy, MLS Cup, and he's built a team in the MLS and he knows this league, I think that made him a very attractive candidate. And I can definitely see why they loved him when he came in as the idea of him. But now that we're here, it's just, I don't think he's the best, even if he is the best on paper. I think maybe that's a good way to put it. He's the best on paper, but I don't know if he's actually the best when you get there. Nuno says, I mean, Argentina national team is the blueprint to get the best out of Messi. It's just that Miami and Messi want all his old friends here. I'll be honest, guys. I don't watch enough of the Argentine national team to know what that looks like. So I'll rely on you guys. Gressel not playing at all lately is weird. You have to wonder what his future is, right? He's on the longest contract of anyone. I think he has 2 more years plus an option after this. His friends were hailed to this match. Now suddenly they are the problem. Our problem is the defense and game management. Yeah, listen, no one's blaming Messi's friends for the fact that this team is. I mean, we won the Supporter Shield because of them. They're the best players on the team, no doubt. It's just disappointing that they didn't rise to that level in the biggest game of the season. But they've never played in the playoffs before, so maybe next year they'll be better with some experience. You have any idea why Tata's there? Messi was why he was at Barca in Argentina. I mean, his relationship with Messi didn't hurt, but again, he won a trophy in MLS, and there's no coach in the world that's won a trophy at MLS and had the relationship with Messi and has coached at a club like Barcelona and has coached multiple national teams and has done everything Tata Martino's done. So on paper, I absolutely understand why they brought him in. Jay says, look for players beyond Argentina, please. Need good defenders from wherever they can get them. Mediocre Argentina players are no better than others just because they're from Argentina. Yeah, listen, we'll talk about this more over the next couple of weeks, but the reason they go to Argentina so much is because Tata Martino has this personal network of, old coaches and scouts and et cetera that are mostly located in Argentina. And he relies on them to find players because Inter Miami's scouting department is not that advanced. And while Chris Henderson's really good at building a roster within MLS roster rules, he's not like he's built the super advanced scouting department. So he's always relied on the coaches to identify the players in some part that he wants to bring in, and then he goes and makes it happen. And so that's why I want to give Tata credit for bringing in guys like Diego Gomez and Federico Redondo and Matias Rojas, et cetera. But ultimately, when it comes to on-field performance, like trophies matter. But, I understand anyone that thinks he's horrible. I definitely do. Nuno says, besides Alba, Busquets and Suarez are super slow. Yeah, listen, Suarez had a great season. I don't know what to say. He didn't show up in the last two games. It's, at 35, Alba's the fastest and Redondo is slower than Mi Abuela. Messi recruited Tata from what I read. Maybe. I think Tata Martino was sort of on the minds of Inter Miami before we got confirmation about Messi, but I'm sure, of course they were linked. But as soon as we fired Phil Neville, we knew like Tata Martino's name was like instantly linked, and we hadn't quite gotten confirmation about Messi at that point. The Barca boys aren't the problem. The team is supposed to play as one unit, not a mob. That I think you can blame on Tata Martino, or a lot of it on Tata Martino. Tough in this game because they were so reliant on Yannick Bright and they didn't have him, and so reliant on Busquets and they didn't have him. But Francisco says Messi wants a coach that will let him do what he wants. Tata's that type of coach. Yeah, definitely. But I think there's other coaches that will do that and will put Messi in even better positions. Elevate Tata to front office. That would be awesome. There's a new guy that we brought in, Raul Sanyehi, who is going to sort of be in charge of the front office. And it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of, what I'm talking about, the scouting department gets a step up and becomes more complex and analytical and has a better handle on what they want to do with this club and the academy department and everything about the club. It wouldn't surprise me if they brought in Sanyehi to build out all of those backroom things that we don't as fans necessarily get to see. And it's not something that's not really what Chris Henderson was doing or even supposed to do. And this club, it's so new that they hadn't really built out a lot of those things. And so I think Sanyehi is probably in charge of some of those longer term cultural ideas and how to build the academy up and how to build the, a style for the first team and all those things you hear about from the biggest clubs in the world that have been around and firing for a long time. Thomas says it's not Tata's fault. Some players need to be accountable. I'm sorry, but Drake has to go and Toto. Yeah, again, tonight I thought Drake didn't have anything great going on, but I thought Suarez were really poor. And so I don't know what you do. I don't know what you want to do with that. They're your best players. They're coming back next year. You're going to build the team around them, and they didn't perform. So, we can't blame. I guess you can blame David Martinez instead of Tata for playing Martinez instead of Noah Allen, but you understand why he did it. Martinez is a more talented player with a better track record and a better tool set. He's not quite as quick, but he's the veteran. And, you're just like nitpicking at Tata, I think in this game at least. But certainly, I thought in the Leagues Cup game we lost to Columbus, that was on Tata. I thought the loss in Mexico was on Tata. So he definitely has his fair share of blame this year. Messi doesn't even want him. It's his dad. Are you talking about Tata? Because I could buy that. Nuno says, or vice versa. I don't remember, but they get along. Tata is an all-time great player at Messi's boyhood club, Newell's. Yeah, I guess. Guys, I'm an Inter Miami fan. I never watched Barcelona. I never watched Argentina. So like a lot of the history of that these guys have together, like it's just sort of peripheral to me. So I rely on you guys to tell me most of the time. But my understanding is that like Messi and Tata didn't have like an incredible time at Barcelona. He got fired after 1 year, right? So again, that's just my understanding. But Silo said, last comment, I know you love Drake, but with the Club World Cup, Champions World Cup, we need a World Cup class goalkeeper. He's good, but we need someone who's better than Drake. Here's what I'll say. As you guys may remember, and we'll talk about it a lot, but you only have so many international roster slots that you can use on this team. And you have to go out and acquire them. You start with 8. You have to go out and acquire more. And so Inter Miami's best chance to bring in talent is to go to the international markets because those players come in for cheaper, right? The best MLS players cost a lot more because they don't take up an international roster slot. They're more established. They have a history in the league, etc. Guys like Matías Rojas are much better than Georgi Mihailovic and other Americans of that sort of stature, but they come in at much cheaper price because they have no history in the league and no sort of track record with which to understand how to pay them. So you get your best value in the international market. Same with the U22s. And so if you're Inter Miami, do you want to spend one of those spots on a goalkeeper just to get an upgrade on Drake Callender? And like, if the answer is you're bringing in, Emi Martinez, of course you do it. But if you're only going to get a 10% upgrade on Drake Callender, I don't know if you really want to do that because it'll take away your ability to go sign a super speedy left winger or another top end center back. And so when you're talking about roster management, like you have to decide, is Drake Callender a problem or is it a guy we can get a 10% upgrade on? And if it's only the 10% upgrade, it's hard to make that decision. If you can get a 100% upgrade on Drake Callender, like a guy who's twice as good, then yeah, sure, go do it. But that's why I'm just hesitant to think they're going to move on from Drake. But I'm sure it's something they're going to look at if they have that opportunity this year at some point. Ash says it's the manager's job to keep his players on point during the game. One of the things I was so impressed with in the first game was that Inter Miami felt like it had so much composure. Concentration levels were at an all-time high. Everyone, first touch was great. Everyone was pinpoint passes. It was just like a collective team effort that was so high level in terms of the precision with everything. And I thought to myself, like, oh, they stepped up for the playoffs. And we didn't really see that over the last 2 games, which was disappointing. Especially Busquets, he's definitely the slowest. He is the slowest, but he's also good at not getting caught out in transition because he's so good at drawing like ticky-tack fouls that, I don't know, he sort of offsets it a little bit. It's Jorge Messi. That's why he's ever been around. I'm assuming that's about Tata Martino. And interesting. Toto played well, but unless he really blew something, you can't throw yourself to the ground like that. I don't know what to say about that, man. That was just awful. Boosie looked like death when he warmed up. Good on him after pneumonia. Yeah. I thought there was a couple players that there's a couple players that really gave it their all. I thought Redondo was really good. I'm really proud of Boosie for even getting on the field. But a couple guys were just dead at the end. Jordi Alba had a huge run at the end to stop a defensive one-on-one transition with, I believe it was Lobjanitsa. David says, what exactly did anyone expect Drake to do about those goals tonight? He was just left out to hang. Yeah, listen, he had one goal that went near post. I wouldn't have expected him to save it, but maybe he could have had like one of those, world-class saves that saved our butts, and he didn't. So the back 5 was the way to go. Tata knows our defense was trash, and the midfield was shaky without Boosie and Bright. Yeah, hindsight is clearly 2020, but probably true. Drake is the least of our concerns. A says, we are what we are. We need more than a World Cup class keeper for Club World Cup. Yeah, agree with that. Nuno says, without Bright, maybe a back five would have worked better. No Allen finished the season playing well. Nuno says Ustari looked better than Drake in that one game versus Toronto, to be honest, especially playing with his feet. Yeah, but listen, Ustari's not going to be back next year. And I think Ustari's played one game in 2024. Like, you can't, if he had come in at midseason and Drake Calendar had like an injury where he missed a month and Ustari had like 3 or 4 or 5 games to get his feet under him, like maybe you could have thought about making that switch, but not with one late season game where you're just rotating. Busquets is like a bullfighter, slow but precise. Yeah. Last one. Thomas says, I'm scared for the Club World Cup with that defense. I'm sure they're going to get a defender, but I think it's really about the midfield, right? And some of you guys get it. It's all about the midfield always. And Inter Miami in this game didn't have the right midfield setup. I understand why. They were sort of missing some of their best options in Bright and Busquets that sort of balanced their midfield out, but there's just too many 8s on this roster. Redondo, Gomez, Kramaski, Ruiz, Sunderland, Gressel. They're all box-to-box players that are, they're not finishers. They're not, I guess Gressel's kind of a creator, but not that sort of classic number 10 that you want. And none of them are true 6s. You're just talking about Bright in that role and Busquets to a little bit of a lesser extent. Busi will set the tempo, control the game with his 190 soccer IQ. He doesn't need speed. Club World Cup, it's about being in the tournament. They will probably get rocked. Listen, the thing about the Club World Cup is if you're Inter Miami, you build your roster as best you can to compete there. Get eliminated in the group stage, it's okay. But if you build a roster to be competitive there, you're going to be ultra competitive in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You're going to be ultra competitive in the MLS. You're going to be ultra competitive in the Leagues Cup. And then next year, hopefully, you're just dominant in the playoffs. But I think there's a need for team speed. I think you need to diversify the sort of type of players you have in the midfield. I think this team could use a true number 10. Like if you could go get a Thiago Almada, not him specifically, but a player like that to replace Diego Gomez on the roster. I think you need to get another number 6. You're sort of set in that 8 role because you had some academy players come through in Kramaski and Ruiz. So like if you just diversified who you had in the midfield, I think that would be really helpful. You need better center backs. We talked about it all year. They tried in the summer to go get the Mexican center back who ended up in Russia, but he's a really good player and his name escapes me right now. So they tried, but it's hard in the summer. I think they would have been better if Ian Frey didn't get hurt. Ash says, so is the bad defense a result of poor quality or poor coaching development? I think it's a result of your defensive players not being available. I think it's Yannick Bright and Sergio Busquets. I think if Bright and Busquets are available, it is you play a back 3 with Busquets sort of roaming in and out of the midfield into the back line. And then you have Bright also. But losing those 2 players, I think, really limits your options. And you're kind of just hoping your talent wins out, and it didn't. Rojas is a number 10. I don't think so. I don't think Rojas is a number 10, even though his skill set would seem to indicate he could do that well. I think he played his best games off the right wing. I don't think we saw him enough off the left wing to see if he could be a good player there. But there was a lot of times where he played in the midfield and he disappeared, even though you would think he has the skill set to progress the ball and whip crosses, those sort of cross-field crosses to Jordi Alba or whatever. When he did play in the midfield, we didn't see that a lot. A says Di Maria. I don't think Di Maria wants to come to Inter Miami. I think he's had 2 chances to. If he wanted to, he could have made it happen. And he's gone back to Benfica both times. So my guess is he's not coming back. MSP says Tata out, poor coaching. Rojas used to play as a number 10 before coming here. Rojas was also not very effective in Brazil, right? He was with Corinthians, and he wasn't particularly effective. I think when he was back with the Argentine club before that, he was playing mostly as a right winger, and that's where he was most effective. Let me just double check where he was at. Racing in Argentina. So anyways, guys, I wanted to hang out with you tonight because this is just an emotional reaction. We'll do a full game breakdown tomorrow, talk about every performance. We'll rewatch the game, see if there was any opportunities that Miami sort of let slip. I know Brad Guzan had a couple of really nice saves. Saur is in London. He's going to, I think, the Manchester United game today. That's his favorite club. So tomorrow. So he wanted to go to bed a little bit earlier. So that's why he's not here. But it's the end of the season, which sucks. And I wanted to come hang out with you guys because it's really just a disappointing finish. And certainly we all had higher expectations for what this team was going to do. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow for a full game breakdown that we always do. And then Wednesday, I have some podcasts from other teams and other sports that I really like. And one of the things they always do is get really sad at the end of the season. And then they take like a long break and they never actually dive into what the team needs to do in the offseason. And so I always said, if I ever did that, I wasn't going to be like that. So our midweek podcast, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, is going to be about what Inter Miami needs to do to get this team into the right spot for next year. What players might be back, what players might be gone, and how this team needs to be built. And we'll talk about the coaches and stuff like that. But that'll be our next sort of non-recap podcast. And then we'll get into the offseason and we'll make some plans and stuff. But yeah, guys, I hope you have a wonderful night. Might be hard, but it's a lot of fun. And, I think it'll be interesting. And yeah, hopefully we'll all feel better by that point too, right? Okay, guys. That's it for tonight. Hope you guys enjoy your evening and see you tomorrow. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.